Hello, my name is Mark Ord and I'd like to welcome you to the second episode of Gaming Ordtopsy. Video games. They're brilliant. So much so that I wanted to make a series of videos talking about the games I love and the reasons why. I like to approach the title in a holistic way, talking about the gameplay, story, characters and the design, which will be sequential to the actual game's narrative. It'll feature interviews from the creators behind the title, as well as portions of uninterrupted key scenes from the game, as well as my comments during my playthrough. It's a long video, so grab a drink and a snack and settle in. So, on with the show. In this week's episode, we'll be looking at Batman: Arkham Asylum.
Take patient interview. Subject has no recorded name. Alias listed as the Joker. In the room is Warden Sharp and myself, Dr. Young.
Is this another one of those boring psych evaluation tests?
No, it's not. So, you're the famous Joker.
In the flesh.
Every doctor that has ever interviewed you claims a different type of psychosis. Everything from multiple personality disorders to, well, the list is endless.
I do my best.
Well, I don't believe it. Anything can be cured given the correct treatment.
And you think you can cure me?
Oh, I know I can.
Now, I'm not going to go into the history of the Batman character because, frankly, everyone and their grandmother knows who Batman is. I do want to talk a little about his appearance in video games though. Batman has had a long and varied career in the medium. Unfortunately, most of these games have been rubbish. I remember playing my first Batman game on my Amstrad computer over 25 years ago, which I thought was actually quite decent at the time. I was wrong. Revisiting it, I discovered that it was a tedious, surreal collectathon. Nostalgia is a cruel thing. He even turned up as a boss in the Revenge of Shinobi, morphing from Spider-Man. I guess Sega didn't really care much about copyright issues back in the day. Since then, it's mostly been woeful licensed games. Things changed though when Traveller's Tales released Lego Batman in 2008. A fun and well received game. Then British developer Rocksteady, who had only one previous game under their belt, the really rather enjoyable first person shooter Urban Chaos, finally changed everything and gave us a truly great Batman game with Arkham Asylum. Since then, things have improved with the sequels, Arkham City and Lego Batman 2. Now, I want to talk a little about the background into the asylum itself. Dennis O'Neil first created the asylum back in issue 258 in 1974. Back then it was known as Arkham Hospital, a nicer term for asylum, and it was set within the heart of Gotham City. Its history and location have been expanded upon and changed since then in a multitude of Batman comics. The most influential of these was Grant Morrison and Dave McKean's Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious earth. A dark and brooding tale that no doubt had strong influences on Rocksteady during the production of their game.
I am the spirit of Amadeus Arkham. The island changed little over the years. Its reputation was in tatters, but I vowed to fix it. As the buildings were rebuilt, I saw the future. A bright, wonderful future.
So here we have a nice, if actually unnecessary cutscene. It's all very atmospheric and we can hear Nick Arundel and Ron Fisher's score in the background. The music throughout the game has that dark, moody orchestral sound that we've come to expect within the Batman world. But in truth, I think the overall musical score is mainly just competent. For me, the music lacks a powerful motif and it never reaches the grandeur of Shirley Walker's animated series theme, or the thunderous percussion of James Newton Howard or Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight trilogy. It's a great shame, but it is something that's improved upon greatly in Arkham City. I love the slightly creepy and unfortunately all too real-world road sign of hitchhikers may be escaping patients. So why include this scene? It really doesn't tell us anything that the following segment does, and I don't think it's as atmospheric as the upcoming prison walk. I guess it shows the Batmobile in action, which is something we'll see later, but I personally think it may have been better starting with the Batman Arkham Asylum title, and just having Batman and Joker standing at the entrance of the asylum.
Hey, Sharpie. Love what you've done with the place.
That's Warden Shop to you. Bowles!
Yo, Frankie! How's the wife and kids? You miss me?
Shut it, clown! A lot of people here really want to talk to you.
Really? I don't mind walking. Not so tight, boys. You'll crease the suit.
Get that filthy degenerate out of here!
Warden, something's not right. I'm going with him.
Now we have control, albeit mostly just pushing up on the control stick. I do love this opening though, with the developer credits on display. It's a borrowed cinematic trick that we've seen many times in games before, but it's a feature that I've always really liked.
Look at all this new security.
How's a guy supposed to break out of here?
New patient in the intensive treatment lobby. All non-essential staff to vacate the area.
Oh, it's always nice to return to my sweet little hacienda.
This is a great way of showing us how tight the security is in Arkham, which begs the question as to why so many of the inmates always seem to escape.
Tunnel's full. Start the scan. Scan initializing.
You know what? I prefer the good old cavity search. Much more personal.
Got a red light. Multiple prohibited items.
I want Joker searched again.
It's not the patient. It's...
Ooh, would you sneak in with your bats? Come on, tell me. Batarangs, bat claws, ooh, bat smacks.
Scan is green on Joker.
Open the gate. Get him out of there.
This is a taunt and atmospheric opening though. It reminds me of those old, good John Carpenter movie thrillers of the 70s and early 80s, lean and moody, accompanied by just that perfect amount of cheese. It sets up so many of the key characters and the environment beautifully. This is a different world to that of any previous film, TV or video game versions of Batman. It's more akin to the comics, not as realistic as the Christopher Nolan vision of Batman, but darker and grittier than the animated TV series or indeed any video game before this.
Hey, it's
We learn that there was a large fire in Blackgate Prison, the penitentiary for the sane criminals in Gotham, who have now had to temporarily transfer to Arkham. It's a terrible idea. It's never a good idea to put all your eggs in one basket, especially bad eggs.
Fortunate fire.
Just gotta check your prisoner, Officer Bowles.
Whatever, just be quick.
Only following procedure. No, patient seems to be in satisfactory condition. Looks like he's suffered minor lacerations, probably in the last 2 hours. There seems to be...
Need to take my temperature? I'd be happy to drop my pants. He's
He's all yours. Get him out of here. He's good.
Like I said, that perfect amount of cheese.
Alert in intensive treatment.
Mark Hamill's performance of the Joker really is phenomenal throughout, and we'll be hearing more from him later in the video.
Granted.
You heard the lady. We got another psycho on the way.
Can you smell the excitement in the air? No?
Killer Croc has certainly changed since his first appearance in the comics, although he is a character that has undergone quite a lot of changes in Batman's history. Initially, he was simply a large, powerfully built, shadowy kingpin, with scales on his skin due to his atavistic condition. He's also been portrayed as a carnival freak and a wrestler. There's been many different physical interpretations of Croc, but here, a hulking 9-foot plus cannibalistic monster. All instinct, bloodlust and teeth.
What's it doing?
I've got your scent, Batman. I will hunt you down.
Get that animal under control!
A toy collar won't stop me from killing you, Batman. I'll rip you apart, eat your bones.
That reminds me, I really need to get me some new
Okay,
shoes.
move up.
Long night, Jim?
Joker invades City Hall and holds the mayor hostage, leaving it to me to juggle SWAT teams, the media, and you. Yeah, it's been a hell of a night.
Hopefully the last one we'll ever have with him.
Yeah, right.
Hold it there. Sorry, Batman. Arkham staff only.
I assure you, if anyone's qualified, it's...
Listen, I appreciate the assistance, but he'll unsettle the more violent inmates.
I think he's talking about you, Bats. Don't be a stranger. You're always welcome here. Gotta say, it's good to be back.
You okay?
He surrendered almost without a fight. I don't like it.
At least he's back where he belongs.
Get up! Now!
Joker's loose. Alert the warden.
Hurry! We're leaving him back! The joke's on you. Ta-da! Honey, I'm home.
Come on in.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman! I set a trap, and you sprang it gloriously! Now let's get this party started.
The system's jammed. We're stuck in here. Joker's in full control of the security gates.
I'll find a way out. Gordon, try and contact the warden. Let him know what's happened. I'll be back.
Don't make promises you can't keep, Bats.
I'm in control of the asylum.
I love the way the Joker stops mid-stride to threaten Batman. The game does an absolutely superb job of maintaining an open dialogue between the Joker and Batman throughout the game via the PA, tannoy and CCTV systems. And we also get information and help through the radio from Oracle, Commissioner Gordon's daughter.
You know it's a trap.
Of course it is.
B2. Warning. Security breach in level B.
Now, I have a particular fondness for any game or film that pushes our hero to the absolute limit over a hellish day or night. Now, that would be something like Die Hard, Assault on Precinct 13, Half-Life, and most recently the film Dread. And this is no different. It's a bad night for Batman, trapped in the asylum.
Level B3. Warning. Harleen Quinzel.
Call me Harley. Everyone does.
I'm surprised you want to intern here at Arkham.
I've always had a thing for extreme personalities. You can't deny there's an element of glamour to these super criminals.
I'll warn you right now. These are hardcore psychotics. Most would rather kill you than speak to you.
I'm sure I'll be fine, Doctor.
They'll eat you for breakfast. I mean it. 1 or 2 of them will enjoy it too. Be careful.
Put the trigger down, Zaz!
Thank God. It's Zaz. He's got Mike. He's strapped in the chair. Zaz has totally lost it.
Wait here.
You can't. He'll kill Mike if he sees anyone trying to get close.
He won't see me.
I see anything that looks even a little bit like a bat, and this guard dies. Do you hear me?
So now we're going to take out Mr. Zaz, one of the less bizarre super criminals in Batman's rogue gallery. Now, when I say less bizarre, I mean that he's just that little bit more grounded in reality. A serial killer who scars his body after each of his kills as a trophy. It's a shame that the game undersells Zaz, as he's actually really quite grim. This man has a lot of scars. But ultimately it's hard for him to compete against the more exotic characters like Joker, Killer Croc, Bane and Poison Ivy. This is also the first time we get to experience the Invisible Predator mode, perhaps my favourite gameplay element in the whole game. These open arenas give us time to survey the scene, plan out our attack strategies and neutralise the criminals one by one in a large variety of ways. The mode is well named as Batman is the apex predator of these arenas, up in the rafters, cloaked in shadow, swooping down and taking out these goons. Using detective vision mode to monitor the rapid heartbeats of the increasingly panicking thugs is an especially pleasing touch. Throughout, the game mixes it up in a variety of ways, like criminals using night vision goggles, electronic collars that monitor the criminal's heartbeats, so once they're unconscious it alerts the others, or explosives on the indoor gargoyles which detonate if you perch on them too long. But the game also gives you a great number of gadgets, giving you the freedom to tackle these criminals in diverse ways, empowering the player, letting you hunt and stalk these thugs down. It beautifully allows us to create our own little stories when we play. Do you take them out one by one, till the last thug is a low babbling wreck, or set up some explosive gel, create a distraction with a sonic boomerang, and wait until the criminals in the area congregate to the nexus point before detonating? I like to imagine that the last thug is quickly reflecting on the life choices he made that led him into this situation he's in now. Sadly, the game never gives us much insight or adds any character to these thugs. They're merely reduced to being little obstacles that produce experience points. Often the Joker is heard on the PA system, gleefully berating his own henchmen as they're neutralised, which is a wonderful touch.
Hi, my name's Sefton Hill. I'm game director on Batman Arkham Asylum, developed by Rocksteady Studios. Focus was this kind of predator element. Rather than stealth, it's much more important that for Batman, it's all about preying on his victims. You know, he's smarter than them, he's cleverer than them, he's stronger than them. And when we looked at stealth, that felt wrong for Batman. You know, it's all about him being in power and choosing how the situation plays out. So we really wanted to do something different with that as well. And that's where the invisible predator element of the game comes from.
I think one of the things we really wanted to push was the detective element of Batman, because he is the world's greatest detective. So we felt that was an element that we could really push and do something new with, and not just in terms of just the forensics element, but also getting the player to think like Batman. So the kind of invisible predator element of the game, where you're sort of tracking down and picking off the thugs. You know, you're using detective mode to study them and to figure out where they're going. And I think the rewarding thing for me is that when I watch people play, I always get the same feedback, is that it's the more I think like Batman, the more successful I am in the game. And that's what we really wanted you to do, is kind of get this experience of what is it like to be Batman.
This is the stuff that we've only ever really seen in comic books and movies, and now finally we get to play out these scenarios. These moments are the best representation we've ever had of Batman in video games. Here, we really are striking fear into the heart of these criminals. and it's glorious.
Take patient interview 20. Joker is more interesting than I originally believed. When Project Titan is operational, I believe Joker will be the perfect test subject. Good afternoon. Today I thought I'd skip back to our previous conversations about your family.
Of course. I was born in a small fishing village. I always wanted to join the circus, but my father wouldn't really let me.
I don't believe you.
My father was a cop. 1 week from retirement when a mob...
I've seen the movie. What are you scared of?
Scared?
Yes, scared. There's obviously something that made you what you are.
What if I'm too scared to remember? It hurts too much.
Then I can help you.
Well, first of all, when I saw the drawings for the game, I said, clearly this is not the models from the animated version, which even that had undergone a change. Remember when he lost his pupil, he went to all black eyes and no red on his lips? I like the original design better, but that's not my call. When I saw the new designs, I said, this is really nasty looking. It looks like almost like a gothic horror novel. And this was even before the sequel where he was, dying of a mysterious disease. And I asked about that. I said, well, what about the voice? I mean, because they wanted me to do the video game. It wasn't like I was auditioning anymore. Now Kevin was in, so I'm nearly there just knowing Kevin Conroy's doing it because he's my Batman. And there's truth in that, in the fact that that's a very symbiotic relationship, the two of them. And I love Kevin. He hasn't read a comic book in his life, and I've read too many. So we're a great team. And Paul Dini was on board. He was writing it.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have Kevin and Mark back reprising their roles in the Arkham Asylum game. There is no Batman in my mind other than Kevin Conroy. And Mark is the perfect Joker.
It's so much more exciting if you can see him in the recording studio because he almost devours the microphone. He becomes so animated as the Joker that he kind of takes over the recording studio. It's really wonderful to be a part of.
You need me and I need you.
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
They said, no, you can go as dark as you want with this one. And he's obviously probably the darkest and the sickest of them all. Because remember when we were doing the cartoon, people would say, why don't you kill more people? And we had standards and practices, which is the censors. And it was meant to be a cartoon for children. So the Joker was all bark and no bite in the early cartoons. He talked a big game, but he really couldn't be as lethal as some of the older fans wanted him to be until these games.
My journey lasted little over a month. Visiting academics in both Metropolis and Keystone, I was exposed to a wealth of new ideas. I began my day returning home in good spirits, eager to see my wife and family. I ended it kneeling in their blood, broken fragments of my life, pouring through dripping red fingers.
What took you so long? Oh!
There's no escape, Joker.
So, from the glorious to the tedious, Arkham Asylum is plagued with terrible boss fights, and we're coming up to our first flavour of one now. Now this is actually more of a mini boss fight, but it follows the same sort of mechanics that we can expect to see in the future, and it's as dull as a boss fight can possibly be, with predictable patterns of attack and the same weakness that has to be targeted 3 times before the ordeal ends. As you've guessed, I don't tend to like boss fights in action-adventure games like this. With the rare exception, most tend to be awful. The boss fight's roots stem from the arcades, usually to create a difficulty spike for the player, which would prompt the gamer to buy more credits. Now, that's fine in that situation, but in a story-driven game like this, it just doesn't belong. It interrupts the flow of the game, and ultimately tarnishes the overall experience. Coming up, we'll see a classic example of the Joker trying to tempt Batman into breaking his ideals of not killing anyone. Ending the Joker's life would be the easiest thing to do, but not the right thing. It was the death of his parents that birthed the Batman, and killing would make him no better than the likes of the Joker. Still, it must haunt him. The lives he could have saved from being murdered by the Joker and all the others just like him, who routinely escape custody, are huge.
Seeing as how I'm feeling generous, I'll give you this one for free. Knock me off, I dare you. End this. Pull the plug. Stop me once and for all. Oh, you're getting too predictable, Bats. Well, I'd love to stay and chat, but I have a party to organize. I've got guests flying in from all over Arkham. You'll see.
Yes, it is I, Edward Nigma, the Riddler, and more importantly, your intellectual superior. My genius has allowed me to easily hack into your primitive communications. My goal is simple. You complete a series of amusingly taxing challenges and, well, you'll see.
So we discover that Harley Quinn has kidnapped Commissioner Gordon with the help of the corrupt and alcoholic security guard Frank Bowles. And this opens up another avenue of gameplay with the forensics. Now, we've seen this in various games before, like L.A. Noire, Condemned, and those cheap CSI PC games, all handling it rather more interestingly than what we have here. We activate detective mode and scan for an initial clue like DNA, alcohol or tobacco samples, and then track down the trace residue to the destination. It's far too simple to be properly engaging, and hardly befitting of the world's greatest detective. It ultimately results in the player just following a breadcrumb trail, which sadly doesn't give us any sense of mystery, a key ingredient to being a detective. In the game, the Riddler contacts us through the radio and gives us these trophies to find and riddles to solve, taunting us throughout. Now, despite the actual forensics element being dull, the use of the actual visual detective mode is interesting. Not only can it be utilised to scan the amount of enemies in a room or whether they're armed, it also gives us the ability to hunt down hidden collectible trophies or solve riddles. It's this mode that makes us feel like a detective, hunting around the arena, searching for something resembling a clue that the Riddler has challenged us to find the answer to. And we want to hunt down the riddles and trophies, because again, the game beautifully maintains a dialogue between the game's antagonist and the player throughout. The Riddler taunts us, and the more items we collect, the less cocky he becomes. Unfortunately, the tool of the vision mode can be somewhat overpowered.
Our perception of the use of detective mode, or the role of it, was more like a tool. In the way that Batman has a utility belt full of tools, we expected gamers would come across a challenge for which they needed to take deploytation that gamers were willing to kind of tolerate, even though it wasn't the most beautiful way to play the game. It was kind of the most efficient way to play the game. It became more of an exploitation because you got more information from the game by staying in detective mode. And so the feedback that we received after Arkham Asylum was people played the game in this sort of bluey haze and never really saw the way that the game was genuinely intended to be played.
So we get to the end of the first forensics trail, and we see the grisly fate of Frank Bowles. It's never a good idea to make a deal with the devil, as Frank found out.
I returned to my work, but I could not shake the pictures from my mind. I should have been repulsed, but I was more eager than ever to find an explanation for why someone would do this. They brought the animal before me, shameless and barking like a mad dog. For what felt like days, I endured his boasts. He took pleasure recounting his actions. cataloguing his depraved crimes. What should have been revenge turned to pity. This poor dog needed my help.
We finally get to leave the intensive treatment area, and we get our first look at the Arkham Island, our gaming hub. The first thing that strikes us is the stylised Gothic Victorian architecture of the buildings, as well as the impossibly huge moon in the sky, all very reminiscent of the comic books.
When I started my career in the early 80s, there were a lot of Batman developments I'd see at various studios, and they were all brightly colored, kind of camp interpretations of Batman. And I would love to do Batman if we could make the cartoons like the old Fleischer Superman cartoons, because that should be his world. Art Deco, dark, with stirring music, a very cinematic take on it.
First thing we did is we just dived straight into the comic book history. You know, we bought everything we could get our hands on. We just piled up a massive stash of comics and just read through them all to really get a feel for this character. The character team worked a lot to try and get this unique look and feel for Batman. We wanted to really get across the kind of comic book Batman, so he's a bit kind of bigger, beefier than maybe what you've seen in the films.
We wanted to do something that took from every great visual interpretation of Batman. So even though it doesn't look a lot like Bob Kane, you might see a little bit of, a hint or a throwback to him. It isn't solely the Wildstorm look. There's a little bit of Neil Adams in there. There's a little bit of Frank Miller. We just wanted to get something that gave the coolest visual interpretation of Batman and his enemies. One of the great things that Rocksteady brings to it is it's a very English company, so there is a very English sensibility to the design and to the look of Arkham and to Gotham.
Something which is really big in the Batman world is the Gothic. So we try to really kind of push the Gothic elements, the kind of like Victorian era, a lot of like metalwork.
Gotham is an East Coast city, and it was built a long time ago, so there are a lot of English and European influences in its design, and that was perfectly captured. Inside, there are some very sleek areas, there are some very steampunk-looking areas, but Arkham is really an old mansion.
Each building has its own history, and then it's been repurposed and retrofitted as the island's expanded, and it's changed from being this kind of residential mansion to being this kind of insane asylum that it is. And how it's changed is fascinating. So although that's not necessarily something that you need to explicitly understand when you play the game, you can kind of feel that this history is there.
Well, through the different buildings, we really try to recreate some kind of history even through these buildings. So you're going from like Gothic to more kind of like Victorian era, where it's going with a lot of metalwork, a lot kind of like creepy Frankenstein contraptions. We added a lot of kind of gritty, moody medical contraptions, and slowly we just saw it coming to life.
Once we see what's in the hospital though, we discover that it's a place of nightmares. It's like the infamous Bedlam Asylum of London in the 17th and 18th centuries. Horrific conditions abound, and we see hospital instruments that look like torture devices left strewn about. It's a place that's hardly conducive to the aid of a patient with mental health issues. The horror is accentuated by the calm tones of the PA announcements and the television advertisements of Arkham Care, stating, "With selective re-education, you can bring home the loved ones you always wanted." Very creepy. The idea of indoor gargoyles is preposterous enough, seeing as their main purpose is to redirect rainwater away from a building. But it kinda works here within the creative fiction of the game world and the design of the invisible predator mode. However, can you imagine the horrific effect these things would have on mentally ill patients who may be prone to hallucinations? Yeah, Arkham would undoubtedly be shut down by any health regulating care commission.
Batman, we've got another problem.
I need to get back to the mansion. All my research notes are there. We can't risk Joker getting his hands on them.
It's not safe, Doctor. The island's a war zone. You won't stand a chance.
It's my life's work. You really don't have the authority to...
I'll get her there, Batman. You ask me, it's about time for a little payback.
Patient interview number 1.
So, I'm your first, Ordtopsy. You know what they say, you never forget your first time. I'll try to make it memorable for you.
Oh, you already have. Tell me, why do you do the things you do?
Why do you think I do it?
Fame, notoriety, A desire to stand out from the crowd? A wicked sense of humor.
You're good. How did you figure me out, Doc? I've had doctors poking around in here for years, and no one was as astute, and if you don't mind my saying, beautiful as you.
Really? You're just playing with me.
Well, you'll never know, will you? Unless...
Unless what? Tell me.
So we're coming up to the first and perhaps my favourite sections in the game are encounters with the Scarecrow.
I got you trapped in a little metal box, hanging precariously over a deadly drop. What say I just blow the emergency brakes and drop you like a sack of puppies? Say goodnight, bats. Boom! Only kidding. Got a few more surprises in store for you. Prepare to face your fears. All of them!
There is no crane. They're all over me! Only Scarecrow. Get me out of here, please, someone!
Please help me, Batman! No!
Jonathan Crane, aka the Scarecrow, was an Arkham psychiatrist and specialist in phobias. He turned to crime and developed a potent nerve toxin which made people hallucinate their darkest fears. Now, these sections hark back to the sanity elements in the Nintendo GameCube survival horror game Eternal Darkness, where we witnessed the game's protagonist's hallucinations.
I'm sorry, Jim. Barbara. I'm sorry. I was too late.
I'm sorry. The number you dialed isn't available. Please leave a message after the tone.
Barbara, are you there?
Please hang up.
Here we get an insight into Batman's psyche and witness his fears and traumas. In the first section, we get a sense of the survivor's guilt that he feels over his murdered parents and the fear of losing his friends. Batman has so few of those.
Father?
You should have stood up to him, son. Like a man.
Mom?
Help us, Bruce. Don't let us die.
One little bat, you're in my world now.
The actual confrontations are a different and interesting variation of the boss battle. We navigate an obstacle course while avoiding the Scarecrow's gaze till we get to the bat signal. They never take too long, and you have to use a variety of gadgets like the bat claw or explosive gel to clear obstacles in your path. It's interesting that these boss battles are just an allegory of Batman's fears and struggle for his sanity against the toxin. The Scarecrow is a giant, with direct confrontation being simply impossible. We control a tiny Batman who has to hide away from this monster, all the while the world starts disintegrating around him. It's a struggle to get to the bat signal, the symbolic tool used to burn away the effects of the toxin. The scenes work because Batman is weak and helpless against his own traumas. It's the stark contrast of being the usual apex predator to being the victim that makes these moments stand out in our minds.
What are you doing, cat?
These are the private notes of Dr. Young. Titan is a success. Even my funding worries have been solved after the unexpected donations from Mr. White. Joker has also shown a remarkable interest in the possibility of a cure. Once the protein bonding process is finalized, I will...
Dr. Young, you ready?
Oh, yes, come here.
You hurt my feelings, Doc. Keeping me waiting like that.
Sit down. You can leave us.
You sure?
We're fine. Aren't we, Joker?
Oh, yes. Well, if you insist. I'm just outside, okay?
So is he here? Did your patient X arrive?
Yes, I must say progressing more rapidly than I expected. But enough of that. Let's talk about you.
No, let's talk more about your Titan project.
My what? How do
I know you have Bane strapped to a table in the basement? Would you believe a lucky guess?
You took longer than I thought.
He's out of control. He's trying to prove something. I'm not sure I can stop him this time.
You'll do it. Batman, listen. We're not alone. He's got something else down there. I don't know what it is.
What a blabbermouth! Spoiling the surprise.
Be quiet.
Oh, am I getting to you? Am I? Good. You're going to love this next bit.
It wants Dr. Young's login.
Never mind that. Get behind me, now.
Bane. I thought he broke out of Blackgate.
Cut me down.
Who did this to you?
Dr. Young, the Bruja. She drained the venom from my blood. Must stop her.
Sorry, Has-Bane. The good doctor won't be a problem much longer. How do you like my puppet? What say we cut him down?
Gordon, run!
It's incredible how large they made Bane in this game. You'd think he'd have absolutely atrocious stretch marks on his skin. Anyway, it's an absolutely crap boss fight. It's practically identical to the Titan Goon fight we saw earlier. It's simply terrible.
You okay?
I'm fine, Jim. Where's Quinn?
Gone. Must have gotten loose while Bane was throwing you around.
We need to get you off the island.
I'm not a rookie. I can handle myself.
I will break you, Batman! Then the Bruja!
No, Bane. This time I break you!
Jim, get back to the mainland. It's too dangerous here.
I don't like leaving you here.
Radio claims he's planted bombs all over Gotham. Gotham will panic. You're needed there.
We're ready to go now, sir.
Bane called Dr. Young Bruja. What does it mean?
It's Spanish for witch.
My family's killer stood in front of me. Years of therapy have deemed him sane. I was proud to see him walk free. In exchange for his liberty, the state required only a signature. He talked about wanting to walk in a park, how he longed to feel fresh air on his face. And then he took my father's fountain pen and killed my secretary. As he was subdued, he screamed out, pleading for forgiveness, for pity. But I had none. I watched as guards beat him to a stain on the floor. Spring was a turning point, a new beginning, a glorious realization of my true destiny. My family's killer perished in an unfortunate accident. These animals cannot be cured. Like dogs, they only respond to discipline. And if that fails, then I was afraid that these accidents would have to continue.
Batman is a master tactician, prepared for any eventuality, apparently including when the inmates take over the asylum. So, he has another Batcave. Very handy.
Identity confirmed. Disabling countermeasures. Security deactivated. Dr. Young was heading up a project. It was big. Lots of external funding. Here are the last notes she filed. I can't make sense of it. What does it mean?
Looks like she was experimenting on the Arkham patients. This new chemical only barely resembles the original Venom compound.
There are a number of changes that appear to amplify the strength of the drug. Multiple references to a Titan formula. Even a small amount could trigger a Venom-like transformation in the host, eliminating the need for the storage tank Bane requires.
Hang on. These notes aren't complete. The formula is missing. That must be the secret Dr. Young is hiding. If Joker gets his hands on this, he will create an army of 1,000 Banes.
So let me get this straight. Young's work involved creating a chemical that would physically strengthen the patients who could then withstand more vigorous therapy methods. I'm going to assume that that's electroshock or psychotropic therapy, or even surgery. Wow, I think Dr. Young suffers from a fundamental attribution error of thinking it's the patient's fault for their own psychosis. A patient needs to toughen up. If not, then I'll make you tough, and then I'll cure you. Quite harshly. It's an absolutely bonkers theory. Now, it wouldn't be a Batman game if it didn't have some great gadgets, and this game certainly has a few of them. Rather interestingly, each one can be used in combat and the navigation of the game world. And the game certainly encourages you to explore every nook and cranny in Arkham. Now, I'm not particularly keen on the term Metroidvania, a mashup of the Castlevania and Metroid game series names. It almost feels like a buzzword. but reluctantly it does sum up that particular game design element rather succinctly. Metroidvania games follow a certain formula in their design. They allow you to openly explore the game world and then discover paths that are inaccessible at first until you find the appropriate power, or in this game's case, gadget. Only in this case, it's a very light Metroidvania style game, with not nearly the same amount of depth as say Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Zelda Twilight Princess or Metroid Prime. Arkham Asylum isn't as immediately free roaming at the start. Doors are always locked and remain so only until the story progresses in a very linear fashion. And once you do gain access to these new gadgets, they never actually allow you to access proper new areas to explore. It's always little secret corners, small hidden rooms, or alcoves which contain Riddler trophies or detective vision puzzles to either collect or solve. The scope is considerably smaller than what other games in this formula offer, but it makes up for it in its richness of detail and the focused nature of the design in the areas themselves.
Our goal was to create a large, persistent, complex, interconnected island, but we needed to do that in a way that was manageable. So we constructed that through a series of smaller, streamed rooms and connected all those rooms together. And this gave us a series of small, manageable problems instead of one big, insurmountable problem. And I think initially when we decided to do that, there was maybe some concern internally that we'd made a bit of a compromise, that people would feel that. But after a while, we really decided to embrace that structure. We really decided that, hang on, this structure is something that can really sell our game. It's something that can really, it's something that's really empowering us to make a better game. So far from taking away from the experience, it actually improved it. We could look at each room in isolation and determine how good is this room? Is it really adding to the game? How good is the art in this room? How good is the design in this room? How good is the storytelling in this room? And this way we could evaluate every element of the game and push up the quality of all these different areas. And I think without making that foundational choice, making Arkham Asylum just wouldn't have been possible. It was one of the earliest decisions we made, but also one of the most important.
He's crazy, you know.
Who? Batman?
No, Santa Claus. Of course, Batman. Always Batman. I've seen it in his eyes. Screaming mad stalkers. And dishonest. Hiding his face behind a fright mask. Well, no masks for me. I have nothing to hide. I laugh at the cruel absurdity of the world. But Batman, he's got them all fooled. He's made them think he can make a difference, that he can actually make things better. And the joke of it is, they all believe it.
The police?
The police, the media, the frickin' Junior Rangers. Every last sack of walking meat in this urban cesspool. Listen, sweets, Batman knows we're all on the same funhouse slide into madness. Why won't he admit it? He's up there in his belfry laughing at us. And the real gag is, the miserable liar is allowed to run free while I'm in here.
That's really incisive.
Then you understand, don't you? You know why I do what I have to do. You know Gotham's only real savior is me.
So we've once more inhaled some of Scarecrow's nerve toxin, and we witnessed the second of Batman's hallucinations. Not only does this show us Batman's psychological demons, it also more importantly lets us play through the traumas of his past without having to leave the island. Lesser developers would have just used a flashback device to see these events.
I can't believe you insisted on sitting through that movie again, Bruce. Come on, we'll be late for Alfred.
I'm sorry, Daddy.
Go easy on him, Tom. He loved it so. Alfred will wait. Keep up, Bruce.
Letting us play through it makes us get more involved and perhaps empathise a little bit more with young Bruce.
Where are you taking us?
We can cut through here.
But it's starting to rain. Bruce is tired. Can't we just wait for him here?
Come on, keep up. We're nearly there.
Hold there, man.
Please, there's no need for this.
Stay where you are. I'll shoot.
I'll give you whatever you want.
Tom! Oh God, Tom!
Be quiet, lady. Just shut up.
Stay away from me! Run! Mommy!
3 people really died that night. Bruce's innocence is utterly destroyed, and everything that he was before this is forever lost. Bruce, Batman, is constantly surrounded by death. He never takes life himself, but battles to save the lives of innocents from the monsters of Gotham, something that he of course failed to do when he was a child. And it's a fight that he'll ultimately never win. How many victims do we see in this game alone? How many dead? You can only save a handful amongst the masses. Perhaps it's enough.
Come on, kid, this way. Take a seat in my office. Is he okay?
He'll be fine. A kid like that with all that money, he'll be just fine.
Shut up, now. He's 8 years old and all alone. Money won't fix that.
Whatever you say, Gordon. His butler's on his way to pick him up. You hear that? He's got a butler.
I've been a fool. Joker was behind it all. He's Jack White. He gave me the money, pulled the strings to release Bane. How could I not have seen it? He's been blackmailing me. He has a crazy plan to create an army of monsters. I want out, but... Hello? Hello? Dr. Young's office.
Please hold for Mr. White.
What?
Hello, Doc. We need to talk.
I'm not doing it, Joker. Do you hear me? Wait. How did you get access to a phone?
Oh, yes. Sorry, Doc. Happy split. I hate small, confined spaces. Reminds me of my childhood.
Another lie?
No, I certainly don't, but let's not get distracted with details. So, anyway, I want my monsters.
I sent you back the money. I don't want it.
Do I look like I care about money? I just want my monsters, Doc. And if you don't give them to me, well then, it won't be funny.
Stay where you are, Batman. Listen to me carefully.
Help me! Please, somebody help me!
Come any closer, and I'll paint the room crimson with her blood. Ugh!
You monster! You evil, evil, evil monster!
He's not going anywhere. You can stop now.
Sorry.
I saw Bane.
I know. Joker threatened me. I wanted to stop the experiment. I tried to give him his money back.
Joker doesn't take no for an answer.
He wants an army, a horrible twisted force to destroy Gotham, but he couldn't do it without the formula. I hid it, but...
So now he has Venom and your formula.
God, he has gallons of the stuff. There's a lab, hidden in the gardens. It's locked off, but the security key codes for the entire island are in the warden's safe.
What else is Joker planning?
How should I know? You think anything he says makes sense? I think he's insane. Oh my God!
Get out of the way!
It's our hubris and ultimately complete misunderstanding and underestimation of the Joker's capabilities that leads to Young's death. Just one more victim to the clown.
Harley! Ah!
You have to help me.
Ivy? Gee, you look like crap. Maybe I can sneak you some shampoo.
The plants, can't you hear them? They're crying out to me in agony.
Yeah? Well, I really don't have time for this.
Please let me out. They'll die without me.
I don't know, Red. You're not on Mr. J's party list. Oh well.
Please!
What the heck? I'll cut you a break.
Now, I'm going to sound like a bit of a prude here, but when I first played this, I was actually a little uncomfortable with the over-sexualised representation of Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Now, I know that Ivy uses pheromones and poisonous lipstick to seduce men, but did they really have to design her with just a partially buttoned prison shirt and skimpy fauna knickers? And as for those lingering T&A shots, here, Paul Dini tells us why they changed Harley's design.
You know, we wanted to do something a little different with her. We thought that having her run around in the clown suit was just not, you know, if she was in a hideout, yes. If she was on a caper, yes. But as she was in the hospital, and our backstory was she had been a trustee and working for the nurses and trying to build her credibility back, it made more sense that when she betrays the doctors that she would go around in a nurse's outfit, like a sexy cut-up nurse's outfit, as a way of mocking the authority.
Which is fair enough, but the game doesn't explain this to the player, so we simply see Harley dressed like this with no context, and in truth that as well is kinda fine. She may also just like wearing these clothes so Mr. J can rev up Harley's motor. But again, it's the slow lingering shots of her body that I personally think wasn't really needed. I guess they had to appeal to their mid to late teen demographic though.
Mama spank.
So along with the detective and invisible predator modes, we have the free flow combat system. Batman is a master in a huge variety of martial arts, so fighting would be as simple and natural to him as breathing, and Rocksteady have created a fighting system that translates this beautifully.
When we originally designed that, it was all based around rhythm action. It was a very different combat system. And then we changed the design completely, but we really liked a lot of the kind of core components of the combat system, of the rhythm action design. We really felt that combat has this lovely rhythm and cadence to it that we wanted to keep in the new system. So in some respects, by going in the wrong direction, it enabled us to come up with some really inspirational ideas for when we created the free-flow combat system that we did.
We use a combination of 4 primary buttons: strike, stun, counter and evade. Chaining multiple attacks without getting hurt or pausing increases the combo counter, which opens new forms of attacks like the instant takedowns. Now, in the fiction of this world, Batman could easily kill these goons with his bare hands, but that conflicts with his code, so he has to concentrate on not murdering them with his assault. This means quicker attacks to ensure their survival, which fits with the style of the combat in the game. These fights are designed to be easier in large groups, and it encourages us to switch targets constantly to maintain the combo streak. They may end up in traction for a year, but they'll live. And there's the variety in the combat too. We can mix in gadgets to our offence, as well as utilise environmental hazards like electrified fences, and changing our tactics when confronting armed enemies. Counters too are spectacularly brutal. They show that the Dark Knight is always on the offensive, even when defending.
Get in.
You won't find Mr. J. He's in the secret lab in the gardens and... oh, crap!
Yep, I know.
Damn. Well, he'll get me out. You'll see. Yeah. You'll see.
Oracle, I've destroyed the Titan production facility. But Joker escaped with enough to cause us real problems.
Just when you think it can't get any worse.
They've been using a venom plant hybrid to create the Titan strain. The plant's the key. And there's only one person on Arkham Island who can help us.
And what makes you think Poison Ivy will help you?
If her plants are at risk, she'll listen.
It's all right, my darlings. I'm here now. My poor darlings. Yes, I know he's found us, but I won't let him hurt you. I'll kill him first.
Ivy, I know Dr. Young mutated these plants to produce venom.
Yes, and I heard it through the grapevine the evil woman paid the price.
I need you to help me create an antidote.
Why should I? Let Joker have his fun. I'll enjoy watching you squirm.
You've been in the dark too long. Every plant on this island will get the same unless you cooperate.
There's a plant growing deep in Arkham Island. Only it can counter the effects of this Titan strain.
Where do I find it?
Oh, and Killer Croc's lair. You didn't think it would be easy, did you?
We'll find you. Rip your flesh like paper.
Sitting in the darkness outside of his cell, I watched the crazed twitching, listened to the disgusting words that came from his mouth. How can I let a dirty animal like this live? He is the cancer I have sworn to protect the city from. I hid in the darkness near his cell, and saw with my own eyes one of the doctors whispering to him. She looked at him through the transparent barrier with tenderness, with, dare I say, desire. My skin crawled with revulsion as she kissed the glass. Fighting the urge to dash the woman's head through the glass, I let her continue. The damnable clown might have shared secrets with her that would be useful once the mad dog has been executed. I'm sure the woman will reveal what she knows to me. If not willingly, then certainly under electronic persuasion. After that, a lobotomy, I think.
So this is the last of our Scarecrow encounters, and it's a great one. It plays with the gamer as we initially think that there's a technical glitch within the game or console, until we see the corrupted bat signal in the sky, the inverted bat transformed into the twisted grimace of a jack-o'-lantern. Here we're treated to a role reversal of the opening cutscene. Now we've seen the scenarios dealing with Bruce's past and the death of his parents, and the fear of failing to save Commissioner Gordon in the uncertainty of the present. And here, it's the fear of losing to the Joker and the questioning of his own sanity. Dressing in costume, skulking about in shadows and putting the hurt on criminals is not behaviour of an entirely sane man. Perhaps secretly he knows that he's troubled, and ultimately the asylum is a place where he belongs. These three Scarecrow scenarios remind me of a twisted and demented version of Dickens' A Christmas Carol, with each encounter being comparable to the ghosts of Christmas past, present and future.
Your head, Wayne. He's gone. Just a twisted shell of a man.
Cut me free!
He's all yours, Joker.
The Ghost of Christmas Future shows us Scrooge's death, as does this, mercilessly shot in the head by the Joker.
Let's start the party with a bang.
I do love the message stating that we should move the middle stick to avoid the bullet.
Too late, Batman. One step closer, and this goes into the water. The cave will fill with your deepest, darkest nightmares, and you will never reach your precious venom roots.
Don't do it, Crane!
Actually, I don't want to know. So are you ready to stop that evil, murdering bat once and for all?
Of course I am. He needs to pay for what he's done to you.
Give it here then, quickly. Come on, Buck. We've got ourselves a bat ticket.
Ducks out, Woody. Say hello to your new and improved Harley Quinn.
Harley, who started life as a simple henchwench in the animated series, has grown into a really interesting character, and that's due to being wonderfully written by Paul Dini and the superb vocal performance of Arlene Sorkin.
I'm on at the roll, let's get it.
I have this friend, Arlene Sorkin, who does Harley's voice. I was watching her on Days of Our Lives. She used to be on that soap opera, and she was in a fantasy sequence where they were all playing nursery rhyme characters. And for whatever reason, they dressed her up in a little two-tone Pied Piper suit. And I was thinking, like, hey, that's kind of cool. You know, let's go with that kind of feel.
Harley's relationship with the Joker is at once complex and at other times a clown parody of love. Harley is a naive, infectious, and ultimately manipulative woman who in the comics intended to sell a tell-all book about the Joker. However, Joker beguiled her and she fell for the sociopath with a wholehearted devotion. But it's a twisted, selfish, and on occasion, ugly love.
Brian Azzarello put in this great, Harley never really talks in that, but he came up with this great image of this thug. It's from this thug's point of view, where he walks by an open door in the Joker's lair, and the Joker's just sitting there weeping with his eyes open in Harley's lap, and Harley's just having a smoke and a drink and kind of patting him on the head. And that to me is kind of their private life. The Joker opens up, and in those moments he is whatever he is at his core, and all his demons come in, and the only one he trusts with that is Harley, or Harley's the only one who knows how to deal with him in those moments.
But then when other people are around, he's just, Harley, knocking her down and shit like that.
And she takes it.
Hi, Puddin'. You're just in time to see the...
Excuse me, I'll be just a minute.
But Puddin', I don't understand. Don't you want to finally get rid of Batman?
Only if I do it, idiot!
But it's still your plan, see? Everything just like you said. Except I hung the guy upside down so he'd see their little frowns as little smiles. Now it all works.
Except you had to explain it to me! If you have to explain a joke, there is no joke!
Now I'll calm down, Puddin'.
You've forgotten what I told you a long time ago. One of the painful truths of comedy. You always take shots from folks who just don't get the joke.
Depending on the writers, her characters become a tool to show a softer side to the clown, or the complete opposite. They highlight the cruelty of the Joker, and it becomes a study in abusive relationships. Harley may at times manage to peel back the layers of the Joker's heart and reveal the small morsels of humanity that remain in him. But more often than not, we see her on the receiving end of a beating and being verbally or emotionally abused by him. Often, like so many abusers, grinding her down to the point where she thinks it's her fault for his actions.
My fault. I didn't get the joke.
As villains go, she can be quite sympathetic, but we should never forget that she's a murderer herself. Sadly, there seems to be a portion of Joker and Harley fans who've romanticised the couple, often glossing over the violence of their relationship, which should never be the case. She's attempted to leave him several times, but ultimately always seems to come back to the Joker, perhaps foolishly thinking that the abuse is worth it for the fragments of tenderness that he may occasionally show her. A mad love indeed. Now, I'm going to probably sound a bit negative here because we're coming up to a succession, 3 boss fights, and I'll try and talk positively about them, honest. So, we're in a sewer, which is surprisingly large for such a small island, anyway, and we need to get the plant samples for the antidote. Unfortunately, there's the monster Killer Croc to deal with. Initially, I really liked this boss battle. We have to tiptoe around the tunnels without making too much noise, lest we alert Killer Croc. It's all very reminiscent to Theseus dealing with the Minotaur in the labyrinth. Brilliantly tense. There's no background music playing, just ambient noise and the sounds of Killer Croc breathing. We're also trying to remember the path and being ever vigilant to the noise meter. The music explodes just as Croc does out of the water. However, it all comes to a crashing disappointment when we learn that Killer Croc can be temporarily incapacitated with a batarang to the shock collar. What's initially suspenseful becomes tedious as it simply goes on for far too long. I guess that toy collar was enough to stop him after all.
I am the spirit of Amadeus Arkham. Even though Amadeus had long since passed, his spirit lived on, surviving, moving through the walls of his asylum. When it chose me, I felt proud. I was honored to continue his work, to cleanse this city. If you are strong-willed enough to follow my tales, you are strong-minded enough to deduce my identity. Come and find me, friend. Together, we will save Gotham. My name is Quincy Sharp, the spirit of Amadeus Arkham. You have done well to decipher my story, and I pray it has helped you on your path. I trust that through my writings, you will do what is right. Please, I implore you, continue my work.
So, Warden Sharp, who's running for mayor, has a split personality disorder, believing that the spirit of Amadeus Arkham is inside him. Jeez, is there anyone in Arkham that doesn't have a mental health condition? Like Bioshock, the collectible patient interview tapes and the audio diaries are a fantastic tool to giving us backstory. I love the way it gave us the tragic life events and mental deterioration of Amadeus Arkham, which built up in its menace quite wonderfully. It's a pity that it kind of falls apart at the end, especially when we hear Warden Sharp's blustery, pompous voice. When we solve all the riddles and collect all the trophies, we finally get a location on our trace of the Riddler and we send the GCPD after him. It's incredibly satisfying.
What? Sirens. The police. You cheated, Batman. You couldn't have outsmarted me. Police, open up! No. I said open the door, now! No! Down on the ground! Down on the ground! No! Tell me, how did you work out where I was? Do you hear me? I, Edward Nygma,
Speaking of secrets, there was a secret room in the Warden's office which could only be accessed with exploding gel, and it revealed the blueprints for Arkham City, the setting of the sequel. The secret was so well hidden that Rocksteady themselves had to reveal its location a year and a half after Arkham Asylum's release. Fantastic. So we have our samples and we're almost at the end game, but Ivy's been up to her old shenanigans and it's time to stop her. I know I said I'd try and find a good point about these fights, but I just can't here. It's crap. It's the fact that these are incredibly simple mechanics that we've played through so many times before in games. Rocksteady improved this with their sequel, especially with the Mr. Freeze fight, which forced you to utilise different gameplay styles and strategies, and it was great. It's just such a shame that none of that is present here.
You had to spoil everything, didn't you? Beating up Bane, feeding Scarecrow to Croc, slapping around Harley, my hobby by the way, and ruining all my lovely Venom plans.
It's over, Joker.
Over? Why, my dear delusional Dark Knight, it hasn't even begun. Say, he looks all run down. Let's Pep him up!
No! Batman! Get away!
Here we go! We're gonna have some fun now, kiddies! You're trying to resist the change! That's not fair! Come on, get in!
Again, this harks back to the scene earlier in the game with the Joker in the elevator, tempting Batman to break his ideals. Here, instead of taking his life, it's to Hulk out. Now, killing would make him no better than the Joker, and the same applies here.
Months of planning down the crapper! I just wanted to bring down your grim facade and for once let you see the world as I see it, giggling in a corner and bleeding. But you've denied me even that. I have nothing to live for.
Arkham Asylum remains under lockdown, its staff at the mercy of the rampaging inmates. Just 10 minutes ago, we received this taped message.
Greetings, Gotham! Joker here! Arkham is mine! Soon I'll unleash madness untold onto the streets of Gotham. But first, direct your eyes to the rooftops and witness the final destruction of your dear Dark Knight.
We've been circling the tower since the... Wait! There! Joker is making his move!
Showtime, Batman! Let's give the room something to talk about! Ha! Two freaks in a fight to the death! And for one night only, please welcome our special guest referee, come on! Change! Get crazy! It's the only way to beat me! You know you want to. Never. You wasted the antidote on yourself? Now that's funny! Hysterical! But you still spoiled my fun, and for that, I'll paint Arkham with your blood.
The Joker is a ruthless sociopath, but he's never been physically intimidating when it comes to confronting Batman. Here is an interesting take on turning the Joker into a physical force to be contended with. And I love how gleefully he thinks he's got the upper hand. But Joker always forgets one thing. This is the goddamn Batman. They never really trapped him in the asylum. They were all trapped in there with him. It is again a pretty poor boss fight, but it is quite funny, what with the Joker being distracted by the helicopter and having his long nails stuck on the wooden floor. It's very silly.
I'm fine, Barbara. The GCPD finally has control of the asylum. Doctors are treating the injured, but it looks like it'll take some time. All super criminals are back in custody. Quite a mess in there. And the venom-enhanced inmates are returning to normal. Though for some, the process can be quite painful.
Dad, how are you doing?
I'll survive. See you tonight, Barbara. Shame about your car. Can I give you a ride?
Thanks, Jim, but I have one on the way.
Get some rest. You deserve it.
Stay safe, Jim.
So, that was Arkham Asylum. Despite sounding quite down on the game, I ultimately think that it's a triumph, and still the best superhero game out there. Rocksteady clearly have a love and understanding of Batman, and it's apparent throughout. We finally experience how it feels to not only be the Dark Knight, but the man behind the mask. The environment is beautifully immersive in its grim depiction, with the island being a character itself. And bad boss fights aside, it has a beautiful balance of different gameplay styles that always entertain. The performances from the voice actors are just utterly superb. In 2011, Rocksteady released the sequel, Arkham City. A larger game set in a cut-off portion of the city turned into a penitentiary, but I felt it lost something. As you zipped about to your various destinations, the environment becomes a blur of rooftops and loses the charm of the original island setting. The inclusion of more characters, side missions, bigger, more complex story, and a ludicrous amount of collectibles meant it also lost that tight, cohesive nature of the first game. Bigger doesn't necessarily mean better. Rocksteady are currently working on a secret new project, so Warner Bros. Montreal have taken up the Arkham reins with Batman Arkham Origins. As the title suggests, it's a prequel set in year 2 of Batman's fighting career and takes place in a large area of Gotham City during a snowstorm on Christmas Eve. Batman has to deal with being the target of 7 deadly assassins. It promises to explore Batman's first encounter with the Joker, as well as his relationship with Alfred. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Anyway, thanks so much for watching Gaming Ordtopsy, and I hope you'll tune in for episode 3. Bye bye.
These bullet ants are showing some worrying symptoms. Spores from a parasitic fungus called cordyceps have infiltrated their bodies and their minds. Its infected brain directs this ant upwards. Then, utterly disorientated, it grips a stem with its mandibles. Those afflicted that are discovered by the workers are quickly taken away and dumped far away from the colony. It seems extreme, but this is the reason why. Like something out of science fiction, the fruiting body of the cordyceps erupts from the ant's head. And when finished, the deadly spores will burst from its tip. Then any ant in the vicinity will be in serious risk of death. The fungus is so virulent, it can wipe out whole colonies of ants. And it's not just ants that fall victim to this killer. There are literally thousands of different types of cordyceps fungi, and remarkably, each specializes on just one species. But these attacks do have a positive effect on the jungle's diversity, since parasites like these stop any one group of animal getting the upper hand. The more numerous a species becomes, the more likely it will be attacked by its nemesis, a cordyceps fungus.